Good morning, good evening, hello, welcome everybody. I'm Craig Thompson. If you've not seen my face before, I'm the CEO of the ICE, and it's my pleasure to host today's webinar, which is on managing staff in a virtual teams in an online workplace. The reason that I'm chairing and not Paul is the chair of the ICE board is that Paul is actually our second speaker today. So we decided to cut down on his workload, and I took the decision to chair this. So we have two speakers today. We have Mr. Aaron Hardoff, who's the member of the board of directors and dean of Hotel School The Hague in the Netherlands. Fantastic facility in The Hague in the Netherlands. And we have Dr. Paul Whitelaw, I've just mentioned, who's the academic director at Southern Cross University in Melbourne in Australia. And he also happens to be chair of the ICE board. We have 50 people registered from 10 countries. At the moment, we've got about half those people that have joined us. But we'll start, and people will come in as and when they can. I'd like to start with Aaron, if I may, and it's the normal format of the sort of the presentation. Please feel free to post questions through the question and answer sort of tab, and then we'll come to them at the end of both presentations. In addition to that, during Paul's presentation, we'll be posting a couple of questions ourselves via the poll function, just to check on the situation in the institutions across the network. Okay, so that's where we are. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Aaron and to tell us what's happening in the Netherlands. Aaron, over to you.
Right, Craig, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me, and also having the chance to join this meeting with colleagues from around the globe. It's really a pleasure. And I see, just looking at the type of names, I think also it is from around the globe, and also some people from Asia. So very nice to meet you. I can't see you, but you can see me. But maybe later in this session, while we are in a question and answer situation. As Craig said, my name is Arend Hardoff. I'm the Dean of Hotel School The Hague, a member of the board of this beautiful institute. I do that since a little bit more than 2 years. And before, I worked for 16 years at Breda University, also in the ICE member, within the Academy for Leisure of that institute as a lecturer researcher, a program manager, and the last 6 years as a dean of that academy within Breda University, before I stepped to The Hague. I first would like to start with a disclaimer, because for me this is not a lecture. It's also not meant as a lecture or a way to share models and theories with you. And I certainly don't regard our school or our approach as a best case or a best practice in dealing with Corona. Far from that. All we do is doing our utmost to care for our community, to optimize the quality of our education, and to live up to the heritage and the reputation as an independent hotel school that exists this year for 91 years already. And what I see is that all around the globe we are facing similar challenges. And the last months during Corona, some of the contacts with sister schools around the world have been more frequent and more intensive than before. Also being even more familiar with the digital tools that are at hand for us. And it's always useful to learn about others and the decision others make, even when it's just about knowing that we are in a similar situation and also make similar decisions. And that, for me personally, that deepens the sense of partnership and friendship. So we can't meet physically, which I really, really miss. I'm looking forward to doing that again. But also in Corona, one-on-one contact or in groups seems to be maybe easier by using Zoom, using Teams in a different way than we did before. Although the challenges are similar that we're facing, let me provide you with some context. Hotel School The Hague, like I said, 91 years, is a university of applied sciences with in total a little bit more than 2,700 students, and divided over 2 campuses, one in The Hague and one in Amsterdam. And that's 70, 80 kilometers away from each other in that very small country, the Netherlands. And most of those students are in our bachelor program, Hospitality Management, and around 25 per year in our specialized MBA program in hospitality management. In year one of the bachelor program, and we have an intake of around 550 per year, 550 students, all students live in our so-called Scotel, residential living on campus. And they share a room with another student, in most cases from a different nationality. And it's really part of our educational philosophy and also educational program. What's also part of that educational program is not only living in that Scotel, but also the running of the Scotel. So managing it in the daily operations, next to running our commercial 2 hotels with in total around 50 hotel rooms and 7 different restaurant outlets divided over The Hague and Amsterdam. And they also in our program earn 1 credit point by living in Scotel and showing good behavior there. So for us, being in that Scotel and living at school is more than just living and just facilities, just housing. And that's important in the light of Corona. If we look then at Corona in the Netherlands, since last March, the whole of education closed. So from kindergartens up to universities, everything closed. And that was part of what we called in the Netherlands an intelligent lockdown of society. Less strict than, for example, countries like Spain or France, but stricter than, for example, Sweden, if you look at countries in the neighborhood of the Netherlands. So just in a few days, we had to make the transition from on-campus teaching, on-campus learning, on-campus living to fully online teaching, even in that practical education, since also all our hotel rooms and restaurants needed to be closed. Also, as a result of that, we had to ask and request all students, more than 500, to leave the Scotel, the place where they live, and go back to their parents inside or outside the Netherlands or another safe place. So in just a couple of days, students flew out to, of course, a lot within Europe, but also to Peru, Vietnam, Australia, all around the world. And it was super, super strange. But Corona went in the right direction in the Netherlands and the neighboring countries. So since this summer, some education is possible again. Physical education I'm talking about, of course. So we have permission of the Dutch health authorities to have those students back in Scotel again. So now currently more than 500 students again are living in The Hague and Amsterdam and also share a room with another student, even under Corona. So we had to take some measures in the facilities, but the Dutch health authorities regarded it as safe enough. And we also started, I think like many of you, with hybrid education, partly online, partly on campus. But we had to make choices in what we can allow on campus. So we prioritized year 1 students who need that structure, also the physical and the social structure, more than students who are already a little bit older and mature. But of course, we also prioritized practical education because we have a system where year 2 and 3 students in practical education manage actually the year 1 students, and together they operate the hotels, the restaurants, and also that hotel facility. We had to prioritize because of the application of rules in the Netherlands. So like in many countries, 2 meters, 1.5 meters, or something in between means that you can have less people in the building because you need to create the space so people can keep their distance from each other. So it means less people on campus on the same time, but also less people per room in the same time. Now, practically for us, it means that in most classrooms where you normally have 20 students, you can now only have 6 maximum. Or in our big auditorium, we normally can have 160, 180 people, now only 28. So people can sit with enough distance from each other. And of course, that impacts the way you use your building and the way you schedule and teach. And at the same time, we still work as much as possible from home, in line with the government regulations, where they really advise to work from home as much as possible. And we try to do that. But we're now in week 5, almost week 6 of our first block, the first semester, and we see that Corona is not going in the right direction. Infection rates are going up rapidly in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Spain again. So the Netherlands is not alone in that, but you see that happening, and you see it especially in the Netherlands in the age group of around 20-24. So the age group of students. And within the Netherlands, The Hague and Amsterdam are the hotspot regions. So we're not really in a good position because, yeah, we have more than 500 students of 2024 living in our buildings in, yeah, so the so-called hottest areas of the Netherlands when you look at the infection rate. So it is tricky. So what we see as the main challenge as a board and as management of this school after the summer is to manage the apparent tension between optimizing education, and especially the amount and extent of physical education, versus managing the health and safety situation, including incidents of students and staff with suspected corona symptoms or already positive test outcomes. So it feels contradictory. We want to optimize and create as much possibilities for students to be in our building and to have physical teaching to complement the online teaching. But at the same time, you see the more we do, the higher the risk that we need to close. And also our school will become a hotspot in terms of infections. So let's now go to the main subject of this meeting. The main challenge I just formulated, managing the tension, feels like walking on a thin line while the line is actually moving. So there are a few parallel policies or activities, categories of activities that we do simultaneously to manage this dynamic and uncertain situation. And I categorize them actually in 4 categories. First of all, health and safety situation. Second, employee well-being. Third, support in different ways. I will elaborate on that. And 4, communication as a subject as such. So let's first go to health and safety situation. Like I said, we had to design our buildings in such a way that if you come to campus, you can adhere to the 1.5 meter rule of the Dutch government. And what we did before summer, so before the first bigger groups of students came back, and staff of course came back in our buildings, is to create a health and safety form, where we ask students and staff questions like, have you been in an orange coded country? Or have you been in contact with people with corona, or did you develop symptoms yourself? But the challenge we face, of course, is that that information outdates pretty quickly. And the question constantly is, how often do we again ask people, and how valid and updated and honest is that information? So that's also a struggle. The most important action we took as a school is actually to compose a corona response team. And what do we mean with that? Is that, like in many countries, test policies and following up on the test policies is the most important tool you have as a society to manage the health situation. And in the Netherlands, it's called the so-called source and contact research of the GGD, the Dutch Health Authority. So what we do is that we have a team of lecturers and support staff and our corporate secretary, more than 5 people, who almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, are behind the email address coronavirus@hotelschool.nl. And we ask every student and every staff member, the moment you think that you develop symptoms, you feel sick, or you have been in touch with people with corona, whether it be within school or outside school, we ask you to email that address so that within an hour you will be contacted by phone and guide you through the procedure, also with the health authority. Do you need to be tested? Do you need to be isolated? With whom have you been in contact within the school? With whom outside the school? And are that also students of our community or not? So we can't prevent infections, not at all, because we're not a prison and people go out in society. But what we can do is prevent the fast spreading of it by really being on top of it, super short on the situation, and also to not create barriers for students to be honest to us that they maybe feel sick or can't come to an exam or can't take part in a class. So creating a corona response team of 5 people that are actually then, other tasks are taken away from them, so they are available, so we can guarantee within an hour you will be called if you email that address. The second thing we do, and that relates more to staff, is that, like I said, we are managing that thin line between teaching on campus and managing the incidents. And of course, there are staff members of different age groups who feel hesitant to come to campus to teach. At the same time, we don't want everyone making for themselves the decision, do I come to campus or not? Because at the end, of course, it affects the total learning experience of students. So we developed a protocol that we say, okay, if there are medical reasons, or for yourself, or for your direct surrounding, as part of that protocol, we expect you to contact our company doctor. And we follow the advice as a school, as an employer of that company doctor. We don't need to know the reasons, but if the company doctor says after consultation also to us, hey, this colleague has a valid reason, then we facilitate the working from home, like we already do, but also the not having to come to campus. And that can mean that some physical teaching activities then move to online, and we also explain that to students. And what we see currently is that the policy works out pretty well. Out of the, let's say, 150 teaching staff we have, now 3 to 4 colleagues via this procedure are allowed to not come to campus for their planned teaching activities. So that's part of what we do in health and safety situation. But another important pillar is employee well-being. We do a couple of things there. First of all, we have regular surveys by our HR department, because it's much harder to stay in touch when you work online and you don't meet people physically to really feel the temperature of the organization, how things are really going and how people are feeling. Are they afraid? Are they demotivated? Do they feel tired? So with the surveys, we really try to stay aware of what's happening in the hearts and minds of our colleagues. And of course, we follow up on that. So also attention of management, of HR, and special attention goes to colleagues who are part of an expat community that have normally smaller social circles in the Netherlands also to rely on. And of course, what we do as an organization is to really show appreciation, how our staff deals with the challenges by a regular present once in a while, by a financial bonus and by financial reward before the summer, an agreement we made with all universities in the Netherlands to do that on top of their normal salary. And we had a fantastic end-year activity, although online, with our Michelin chef alumnus Joris Beidendijk. So we also try to do some fun stuff, some social stuff to keep people involved and also to allow them and facilitate them to meet colleagues a little bit around the circle of the colleagues they functionally work with every day. But the most important thing we are trying to do when it is about employee well-being is trying to manage the workload. As a school and as management, we really decided to reprioritize projects, and it means that we won't execute the strategy as we define it, also with the timelines. And on an individual level, it means that some colleagues that teach at the same time also don't need to work on other projects. For example, don't have to work in the research day or have to deliver in the research day that they also have. Or that they have to be accountable for personal development and the courses they took, because we understand that everything you do right now should help you to survive and to manage in this new situation, to teach at least partly online. We really use budget also to hire extra freelancers to spread workload and to deal with peak pressure, especially if you develop alternative exam forms that take just more time to grade or to prepare, for example. So what we see when it's about employee well-being, and it's probably similar to what you are seeing, is that online teaching is challenging. It requires change and new competencies. It's exhausting because of screen time and less satisfactory because of the lack of social contact and reward, especially in a hotel school and with such a tight community where being on campus and enjoying each other's company is so much part of why working at our school is so much fun. So that's something what we do, some of the things we do on employee well-being. But of course, there's also the more technical part under the label of support. Because one of the things that plays a role when people have to work from home is also how well is home equipped to do that work. So one of the things we do is to also via those surveys ask people, is your workplace at home, does it suit you? Do you have the right screen? Do you have the right chair? Do you need headphones? And if yes, please let us know. And if needed, we even bring it to your home. So to really be hospitable to our staff and also facilitate them and not take away the extra hurdles or barriers that they encounter while working from home. And it already goes better now. A lot of smaller children go back to school again, also in the Netherlands. So working from home is easier if you don't have small children walking around you. Maybe you also recognize that. Next to that, we also have continuous support. So we really have a team, and we even enlarge that team of the support on both hardware and software, but also the team of educational advisors on didactics, e-didactics, and the choice you make at course level to make more optimal use of the fact that you teach online. Because what we saw in the first months, and in some courses still, is that online teaching is actually a one-on-one translation, both in time, group composition, and in didactical model of what you would have done in a physical classroom. And I think we all know that that's not an optimal situation. And like many of you, we're now in Zoom, but we as a school chose for Microsoft Teams. It's really the main environment for communication, for teaching, for meeting, etc. But we also created more speed in creating licenses on, for example, WebEx, Graspel, Lobster Inc. And we're working on proctoring software right now for taking exams. So I think there, facilitating teams in online working, online teaching is also about support, coaching, the technical support, and of course also having the right tools and software available to work in. And the last pillar, and then I think I'm still within the time slot I got from Craig, is communication. Because I personally think that communication is super, super crucial to keep people aligned. When they're working from home and maybe only 1 day or 2 days a week at work and some hardly at work. The most important thing we try to do is to be honest, transparent, and as updated as possible about the factual situation, especially now with the infections within schools, students being infected or lecturers having symptoms. It's super important that you prevent gossip. So the stories going around of huge clusters, well, actually, in fact, it's not true. So it's fake news, so to say. So we try to tackle that with constantly updating our intranet and also being honest about how many cases are there, on which campus, were that the students that are living in Scotel or all the year students. And is everyone informed that needs to be informed if you look at the line of contact? And of course, we supplement that with emails from management and from the HR department to update people on the continuously changing situation and the policies that we have to adapt accordingly. But the most important intervention we actually created and works out pretty well is that as a board, and of course we are a relatively small school, we started using Q&As. And what we mean with Q&A is that every 3 to 5 weeks for different student cohorts, because they have in different parts of the curriculum and have different needs, we have half an hour via Teams, where students hear and listen to a few opening statements as me as a dean, or Regina Verstieglitz, my board member, or one other of the management. So 5 to 10 minutes, just some news, and maybe often already explained in emails, but just to highlight some statements. But having the possibility via chat to ask questions, whether it be about exam rounds, regulations, safety situations, the quality of education whatsoever, and to respond to that. And also those meetings are recorded, and the questions again are then translated also in the frequently asked questions session of our intranet. So the strict synergy between intranet and those more personal Q&As, where they also see our faces, works out really well. And we do the same for staff. And what we hear back is that people really appreciate that. And even after Corona, they say, hey, this is so useful. Why don't we keep on doing this? And that's, of course, something we are evaluating right now. I'm coming to an end. We're working really hard and really try to keep our eyes on the ball. And for us, eyes on the ball means priority to education, education, education. And all the rest is less important. But what worries me the most now is that, like I said, the situation in the Netherlands is worsening. And government or mayors taking decisions that, again, restrict the possibilities that we have to have students living on campus or teaching on campus. And maybe you already heard about it, but our friends of Lausanne, EHL, have a situation now where a large group of students has to go in quarantine on campus. And of course, that's a situation that we really, really want to prevent. What also worsens me is that we offer help, but we also see the situation, and I'm curious if you recognize that, is that colleagues realize that they need help, but stop asking for it just because the mental and literal space is lacking to do so. So they feel stuck, they're so full, struggling so much that they don't even see how to ask for help anymore. So the struggle is not so much that we don't have the help available and the support available if people need it, but they stop asking for it. And the last worry, and of course that's related to the previous one, is that Corona takes too long. Staff, students and management are starting to get tired. Already since March this isn't happening, and many of us had hardly any holidays to prepare for the next academic year. And we stretch it long and maybe too hard. But yeah, there's nothing we can do, and we can only act in the moment and to the challenge we are facing. But of course, demotivation, irritation, sick leave are serious risks. They're relatively okay right now, but we're only at the start of a second wave, and nobody knows how long this will take. But to conclude and also to end, at the same time, I'm super, super proud of our students and our staff, and seeing them again in the buildings and really enjoying and appreciating every second they have possibilities to be in the building, to be there, to meet each other, and to have interaction with our staff. That keeps all of us, I think, running. So thanks for listening, and I'm very open for questions, feedback, or hearing about your experiences. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Aaron. That was fantastic. It really was. It was a great insight into the specific challenges for Hotel School The Hague. I think you know, we all appreciated that it was difficult for all institutions, but particularly those institutions with large volumes of international students, and doubly so for those with larger volumes of international students that were resident on campus. I mean, it's like the perfect storm, you know. And so, describing how you've dealt with that, and describing the measures you've taken, both for the students, for the staff, and from the management, but also sort of keeping the business going. That was really very useful, very insightful. So thanks for that. I'll ask Paul to start his now, and then, as I say, we'll come back with questions at the end, if that's okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Appreciate it. During Paul's presentation, we will do a couple of poll questions. So I'd ask all the participants just to keep an eye out for the poll questions coming up. You'll get a couple of minutes to respond to that, and it's just to give us an insight of what's happening at your institutions. But for now, can I hand over to Dr. Paul Whitelaw to give a Southern Hemisphere perspective from Southern Cross University. Over to you, Paul.
Terrific. Thanks, Craig. I'm based here in Melbourne, which is, for those of you who are not familiar with Australian history, Melbourne is the land of the Woiwurrung and the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the original inhabitants of Australia. And I am on their land, and I pay my respects to their elders and their leaders, present and emerging. It's something I like to do, and is often a traditional thing for us to do, to acknowledge that. I also acknowledge my fellow board members who are here tonight. Lilibeth, Genke, Christina, and Scott, great to see you, and it's terrific to have you on board. Hard act to follow. Thanks, Aaron. This will be an interesting exercise. Look, by way of setting our scene, Victoria, the state of Victoria has been in a state of emergency for the last 5.5 months, and in fact has been in a state of disaster for the last 4 months. And what that means is that I have been housebound for 193 days, and we actually have curfew operating in the city. So it has been a very, very tight situation, and our lives are absolutely controlled, for want of a better description, by our Chief Medical Officer, who is closely watching the infection rates, and based upon his advice, we will act accordingly. More broadly, within the Australian situation, though, life, I suspect, will not return to normal, and therefore COVID-19 is not so much a speed bump from which things will get back to normal, but rather a catalyst that will drive profound change in the higher education system in Australia. Our current thinking is that we will lose somewhere between 25 and 30% of our total higher education revenue for the next 4 to 5 years, which is an astounding amount of money. The sector is already looking at more than 30,000 redundancies, and we currently have a raft of laws going through our Commonwealth Parliament that will change the funding arrangements for higher education in this country. So we are going through quite a significant and massive change. And I very much appreciate Aaron's comments about all the things that you've got to do, both in the short term and the long term, but our thinking is very much shaped by the longer term. So what I'm going to do now is see if I can share my screen. Good Lord, I've got a pop-up there. If I share my screen, oh, Jane, can you give me screen sharing, please?
Yes, hold on.
There we go. All right, so Jane, you can see a PowerPoint presentation there?
Yep, that's come up.
Beautiful. Okay, so I'll roll on and start talking about managing staff and virtual teams in an online workplace. And there are 4 key areas that I want to address, what I'm calling focusing, doing, achieving, and being. My informing thinking is Peter Naisbitt's work around high tech, high touch, but also Ruben Puntadero's work around SAMR, S-A-M-R. But most importantly, Winston Churchill's comment, never waste a crisis. So some ground rules to sort of shape our thinking. Our core business and our license to operate, all of us as education institutions, is assessment and certification. It's not actually teaching or training. I know we focus on teaching and training, but our license to operate is in fact assessment and certification. And that's a critical thing that we must always remember. Life goes on. Despite the challenges of COVID-19, we are a process point in a large system that does not stop. There are students coming through secondary school. There are students starting primary school even. And so whilst the industry might slow down, the flow of students through education does not stop that quickly. And in fact, in Australia, we're scheduled in around about 2023, 2024 to see an increase in incoming student numbers of around about 7.5 to 10%. Those of you who are familiar with the Australian situation will know those as the Costello babies. But Australia currently has its largest cohort of year 8 and 9 students. And so they are coming to us. We've just got to be there, ready for them. So given that, those issues and COVID-19 will be here for a while, we actually have to transition from a holding of the fort, what can we do to get through to next semester, to actually this is what life is going to be like for us long into the future. So going online exposes us to, firstly, a global student body, which creates enormously interesting and exciting opportunities, but also exposes us to global competitors, some who are very prestigious institutions with considerable market power. So that again poses some great opportunities, but some significant threats. All right, so some of my thinking that's shaping all of this. Naisbitt's work back in the early 80s, and I know he said the paperless office, and we continue to laugh at that. But this idea of high tech, high touch, it fits beautifully for the hospitality industry as well. But this idea, if you use the technology to all the dull, repetitive, precision-based functions, which people aren't necessarily good at, in order to free you up to provide a high level of personal engagement, which we as people are good at. So we're having to use the technology. Let's think about making better use of the technology. And SAMR was developed by Puntadero to actually talk about teaching and learning, but we can also think about this from a management point of view. This notion of using the technology to substitute what we currently do manually, to augment, to modify, or to completely redefine and reimagine what we do. So what does that mean for us as academics and academic leaders? And I'm always mindful that at the ICE, most of our colleagues are academic leaders. And so my comments will be focused very heavily on those who look after staff and colleagues rather than those who are with students in the classroom. So focusing. Now that the mad rush to get online, ASAP, many institutions had to go online literally over the course of a weekend. How do we get comfortable in this new digital space that looks like it's going to endure? And remember, assessment is our special license to operate. We just can't ignore that. We can't get too caught up in teaching and learning and those things without making sure that we protect our license to operate, this ability to assess the students, to assure ourselves and the world that the students meet a particular standard and therefore they're worthy of whatever qualification it is that we grant. So how do we protect that against those who don't have the license, who are out there? I noticed that Google is offering a raft of online analytics courses that don't have a formal qualification at the back end of them. They don't articulate into a university degree, but Google says this is where we think the industry is going. So learn this and you can perhaps find employment with us. But also, how do we compete against the global brands, those really big schools? And how do we do our own internal education to address these challenges online? How do we do PD and staff development? So the doing, what can we actually do? Well, we can move meetings, both one-on-one and group meetings, online. That's a really obvious one. And you know, that's perfectly understandable. I mean, it's obvious. But the really interesting question is, what else are we doing? Are we simply using the video and the audio meeting app to conduct the meeting? And again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. But most of those systems have a transcript function. The idea that you can hold a Zoom meeting, and at the end of that Zoom meeting, you can get a recording of it, but you can also get a transcript of it. And that begs the question, well, do we need secretarial support to maintain minutes in meetings if they are being recorded and transcribed as we go? Aaron spoke about using Microsoft Teams, and Teams is another one of those technologies that can do that sort of stuff. There are things like dynamic document editing. So if you cast your mind back to the SAMR model, under S, you might write up a document in Word or whatever, and you might email it to somebody. Perfectly fine, fair and reasonable. In the augmentation part of it, you might use track changes in that document, but still email it back and forward. But in the redefinition, the completely rethinking of it, why aren't all of our documents in a shared common space where we can work on those documents in real time? Similarly with our discussion groups and our working parties, is there any reason why we can't have the electronic whiteboard, the dynamic Word document, the dynamic Excel spreadsheet, and use those things in absolute real time so that there is one single source of truth of that document? Another one area, chatbots. I'm doing some work with my home institution at the moment where we're exploring this idea of using chatbots to sit between policy, which is very formal and strict, and the sort of lingua franca and the day-to-day life of the institution. And that's many institutions have chatbots on their student inquiry page, you know, that sort of first page, but you can train them to do a whole lot of internal knowledge holding and using that knowledge held in common vernacular and in the working vernacular of the institution. So that's again something that you can put in place to help you better work with and manage your teams. Now, let me see what's happened here. I've lost. There we go. Doing is so important, it actually gets 2 slides. So I want to pose the question, you know, are we simply moving paper online, or are we moving online? What about things like our forms? Are they process controlled, database driven systems, or are they just Word documents that we keep pushing around the place? How do we share reports? Are they simply paper forms in a doc file or a PDF file or even an Excel spreadsheet that are emailed, or are they controllable dashboards that are centrally distributed so that we can all look at the same dashboard at the same time? One can moderate a variable or choose a selection point and see the graph recalculate and reconfigure in real time. And then the last one there is all of these digital systems generate significant amounts of data for tracking student performance and engagement. So again, working with our team as academic leaders, given that we're online, given that we're catching all this information about these students, can we start thinking about how we can better track and monitor student performance and student engagement using these technologies that have basically been forced upon us. So that's the doing, the focusing and the doing. I'll talk a bit now about achieving. So what does productivity and performance look like online? So how do we develop and deploy new courses, new curriculum, new pedagogy, new assessment? What are the collaborative tools that we can use? And I suppose this is where I differ from Aaron in the sense that this is our challenge. We don't have the luxury of thinking we can settle our course, curriculum, pedagogy and assessment and just sort of put that on hold until we get through COVID-19. COVID-19 is going to be impacting us for a long time. So we have to carry on with course development, curriculum development, pedagogy improvement, and most certainly assessment improvement. We need to be thinking about how we go about delivery and better ways of gaining student feedback. And again, there are lots of tools out there that we can use. It's quite possible, if you're using things like Zoom or even Blackboard Collaborate, to have tiny little quizzes, super quick, but tiny little quizzes at the back end of those to get a better handle on your students. And the nice thing is, from a management point of view, that's real-time data. And so you can in fact start working with your colleagues on improving their teaching activities almost in real time. I keep talking about our license is driven by our ability to assess and assure learning. And so I'm really focused on this idea of how we're going to assess the students. Some institutions have gone to online proctoring. To my mind, that is S in the SAMR model, that simple substitution of a paper-based exam to, you know, a student in an examination room with a paper-based exam, moving them online but still being digitally proctored. But in other settings, we could move to an online video demonstration, which could be in real time, or could be a video recording that the student uploads. Or we could even go to online oral assessments. And Griffith University here in Australia has been doing some really, really interesting work around that. And again, many of the naysayers would say, we don't have the time to do a 3-hour written, oral exam with the students and all of that. But their work is based around the idea that more often than not, within about a 5-minute conversation with a student, you'll get a pretty good handle on whether the student knows the material or not. So maybe there's an opportunity to develop in our staff the interview skills for them to be conducting online oral assessments. Moving forward. Okay, coming up the straight. This is my next to lucky last slide. This idea of being, how do we as a team be? How do we exist in this online environment? Teams ultimately are made of people, and we are still human, well, some of us are, and we need interaction with our fellows. So there are 3 key areas that I want to just touch on here. The first one is this idea of digital commuting. There's now a lot of research out there that says that people who commute are really struggling with this, people who normally commute are really struggling with working from home because they've lost the ritual of their commute, that sort of 20 minutes on the train or the tram or the bus or whatever it might be, to psych themselves up in the morning, but then wind down at the end of the day. So maybe we need to be thinking about some activities with our colleagues to warm them up in the morning and then to help them sort of cool down in the afternoon. Next is what I call meeting fringes. And there are 2 dimensions to this. The first one is the scheduling of meetings. Just because we are in the space does not mean a meeting can go from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock and then 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock and 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock. You wouldn't do that in a physical world, and you shouldn't be doing that in a virtual world. So maybe meetings are scheduled at the hour, but only run for 50 or 55 minutes. But the more interesting thing about the fringes is all meetings, the first 4 or 5 minutes are set aside for idle chatter, and the last 5 or so minutes are set aside also for a bit of social engagement and interaction, so that it's not just all business, business, business. There's a pattern of engagement activities that we can do. Daily, have a virtual coffee, so the team might meet just for coffee and to chew the fat and talk about what was on the television last night. Weekly, you could have a Friday afternoon virtual drinks. That's a very traditional Australian custom, which some person has already called Zumba, which I think is quite cute, very clever. On a monthly basis, you could have a trivia quiz night or something like that. Kahoot is perfect for those trivia quiz nights, so you know, you might want to explore that. Or you could do digital show and tell. Now, this is a really interesting one, and it redefines the nature of our relationships, because you can have people do a little video about their home, maybe about their garden, maybe they have a particular skill that they wish to video record and show, or show in real time. You can do those things. On a semester basis, you might have something a little bit more significant and celebratory, an online art gallery or a concert or a visit to a museum, any of those things. At the institutional level, and again, picking up on some of Aaron's comments, you can have stay-at-home fitness programs, especially those with the data tracking apps that do the nice visualization. Mental health counselling is absolutely central. Frequent town hall meetings with staff and students, getting the Vice-Chancellor or the Director online, taking questions is incredibly important. On-campus streaming cameras, especially in an attractive setting. I should mention one of the campuses of my institution is in the Northern Rivers area of New South Wales. It's a beautiful subtropical area, and it's a bushland campus. And so they've set a couple of cameras up, and it's fascinating to see the wildlife coming back onto campus as people start to fade away. So those sorts of things are really quite interesting. And then the last one, the virtual graduation ceremony. Lots of institutions are now doing these. Some are doing them better than others. My former employer, William Angliss Institute, has just completed a cracking virtual graduation ceremony, and a really terrific event, and was incredibly well packaged up. But I am very mindful of the time, so I will say that's me, and I will now stop sharing, and Craig, I'll hand back to you and let you take us from there.
Well, thank you, Paul. Again, excellent presentation. Really, really useful, and a great insight onto some of the things that you're doing at Southern Cross University, and particularly for the long term. I thought the comments there that we need to be focusing from just in a sense managing and holding the fort to making this business as usual was really interesting, because I you know, in my opinion, I tend to agree with this, that this is not going away, that these changes are here to stay for the long term. So absolutely, perfect stuff. Okay, during Paul's presentation there, we ran the poll and 3 questions. Interesting results that I can share with you, because Jane, thank you, just sent me through the results. So we asked in the first question whether are any staff still remaining at home? I think that was the question. I'll make sure I've got it the right way around. Have all your academics returned to work in person, at least in some form, for meetings or not? 67% said yes. So 67% said that the staff are coming in. 33% said no. So you know, it's a significant proportion that are still working remotely and are not coming into work at all. So I think that just emphasises how important the webinar is, and how important some of the strategies that Aaron and Paul have outlined are. Second question was about support. Has your institution offered support of any form? Interestingly, 88% said they had received support of some form, and this could be technological or emotional or training, etc. But 12% said no, which is still a significant proportion that had not received any support, given what both Aaron and Paul identified, that this is not an easy process. This is not something that we can just do. And I think there's again, Aaron and Paul alluded to this, that there was an impression that we could just take everything that we did face to face and suddenly just put it online, and that was it, and that's all it's needed. And clearly, that's not what's required. That's not feasible. It takes a lot of additional skills. It takes a lot of additional sort of technological skills, but also sort of time management skills and emotional skills to deal with this transition. So it's worrying that 12% of the respondents there are getting no support with this. But I think also the point Aaron made about not waiting to get support, but asking for support is really important. So those I don't know who they are, the respondents that said no. If you need support, then ask for it, because it is important that we all get support. And maybe your managers, your institutions don't know that support's required. So don't be afraid to ask. And then we asked also in the final question about issues. Are you aware with the staff facing issues with this transition? 100% said yes. So that's 100% are facing some form of either technological, emotional, resource issues. So that just proves the point again that this is not a straightforward transition that we're going through here. Okay, so that was the results of the poll there. Very sort of very insightful and supports what the presenters have said. I'm looking at questions. Have we got any questions from we've got more than 30 odd participants now. Are there any questions from the participants? Because we've got a few minutes now. Please just ask away. Do you see anything, Jane?
No, nothing has come through, but we certainly encourage you to ask any questions. So we do want participation. So if you do have questions, please don't be shy. Put your hand up, or I can unmute yourself. So please just raise your hand if you do want to ask a question, or pop it in the chat box. Either way, we do want to facilitate questions. So please be courageous.
Yep. While I'm waiting for that, if I can just go to Aaron, and the changes that you've made, Aaron, are you already planning for these to be? Does the board sort of like have a strategy as to, in terms of, we see this for 6 months and then it's back to normal, or is the board already saying no? Actually, this is long term. These changes are here to stay.
No, good point, Craig. I think, yes, maybe in the current crisis that's shorter term, but I think the effect will be much longer. The effect of this crisis, how it also fundamentally the way we think about being on campus or being away, or teaching online versus teaching physically. So I think you see two things. On one hand, we value more than ever the value of also campus life. So even if we already thought about maybe in the future starting fully online programs, now it's for clear that that's not our DNA. So I don't condemn institutes doing that, but that's not what we will be good at. We are good at also making use of that community, that physical environment, the outlets, the practical education, etc. But certainly you see that already also in practical education, training certain skills before students are in the kitchen or before they are serving guests is super valuable. So I see that quite a few of my staff who have been quite hesitant maybe to online teaching elements now also see the value of it, or maybe see the efficiency of it, or an enhanced learning curve of it. So I think strategically, yes, this will certainly take longer. And as an institute, we already defined a program digital transformation, because I think we are all looking at the way digitalization transforms both education, but also our industry, and the way jobs change in our industry. So that's something we're doing anyway, but what you see is kind of a reprioritization as a result of Corona. So if I created the impression that we just are only in daily business and don't think about the future. I think the opposite is true, but the choices we make of the future are being impacted by Corona, certainly.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It's it would be interesting to see at what point these changes become sort of strategic sort of decisions and embedded in what we plan to do in future. And it relates to Paul's point that there's are we dealing with sort of like the current crisis, or already have we identified that this is going to be with us for the future, and there's opportunities there? So there's opportunities in saying, like you said, Aaron, that actually it's within the DNA of Hotel School The Hague to do face-to-face delivery and to have that sort of social interaction. So actually, no, we're going to continue with that. Maybe other institutions are making different decisions and saying, already actually the students are not going to return, but we're on the other hand, we're finding we're good at this online delivery, so we're going to take a different strategic direction there. Are those decisions already being addressed, Paul, at Southern Cross?
Yes and no. We recognise that there are significant, obviously significant long-term challenges. The university is moving towards a new delivery model, which will make greater use of the real estate. But the one thing that is really, really interesting is the nature of the students' relationship with the university is being pushed more and more online, but more and more online into a what I call a digitised workflow process control thing. So there are no, well, the program is to remove all paper-based forms. Any piece of paper that's got a box drawn on it that either has a student ID or a unit ID or a course code or whatever, that's being turned into a process-controlled e-form to absolutely expedite all of our processes. Sorry, I've got to turn the camera off. In my funny little darkened room at home. So that's certainly what's going on. But it's interesting, La Trobe University, one of the larger public universities here in Melbourne, just scrapped their 2025 strategy and have come out with a new strategy. And the two key things about that strategy that are most interesting are they've stopped talking about money. It's interesting to see a university that's not talking about money in its strategy, and it stopped talking about international students and the breadth of its curriculum, and it will become a more specialised institution. So it will be a comprehensive university, but it will have its 4 or 5 key areas in which it will specialise in, and that will be its prime focus. And again, for those of you who are familiar with the Australian situation, particularly from 30 years ago, this is actually what Dawkins wanted to happen back in 1988. So it only took 30 years in coronavirus and COVID-19 to bring it about. But yes, the institutions are becoming more focused on their key expertise rather than money-making machines chasing international students, I suspect. There was a question about laboratories. Can I jump in and respond to that, if I may?
Absolutely. There's questions coming from
is that Marty Chu? So at my university, we have a number of programs that have laboratories where the students have to present for laboratory work. As much as possible, we are moving to digital laboratories. There are simulated laboratories for different types of disciplines and fields, but where that is not possible, we're moving to a very safety controlled and safety driven environment. So, safe measures, safe distances, all of the things that Aaron was talking about in terms of letting students back on campus, but with all of the safety issues put in place.
How are you dealing with the practical classes? I spoke to Aaron, and I suppose your students are actually physically there, so you can still operate your practical classes. Is that correct?
You're asking me, Craig?
Yes, sorry, Aaron. Yeah.
No, of course. Since we have the outlets are open, all in a different setup. So, and of course, with less people in the building, part of the customers are also the other students and staff, of course. So to create enough dynamic in the outlets, in the restaurants, of course, and with less people, we have less hotel room bookings, for example, so less customers there. So that's something we have to deal with. At the same time, they have to deal with the challenge of the 1.5 meters. So something else, another challenge come in place of maybe the crowds that they have to manage at some point. So the peak pressure is lower, but different. So in that sense, I think we can provide enough learning opportunities for students. But what you see is that especially the preparation of those real life learning opportunities, there digital comes in handy. Also with elements like Grasp or not Grasp, but Lobster Ink is really useful to prepare students already, train some stuff before they are exposed to the real customers. As part of our educational vision, we have actually kind of three leading terms or principles, and it is play, personal, and real. Playful, personal, personalized, individual, and real in terms of the more real the learning context, the more you trigger the will to learn. Absolutely. And the wish, the appetite for learning. So in that sense, I personally would never advocate replacing the real with digital or simulated, but to complement it, it's fantastic, of course, the things you can do. So I think the learning curve, the learning intensity, the amount of times that you can practice before you are in front of that real customer, that's, I think, that's something that we're really embracing now.
Okay. Just on that note, and I'll do a plug for the previous webinar. Those who weren't able to join the previous webinar, where John Daly and Olivia from DCT talked specifically about this and the delivery of practical classes. And if you didn't manage to see that, I'd recommend it's on our website. We've got the recording of that. I'd sort of encourage you to have a look at that, because some really interesting stuff, from both presenters, doing sort of virtual internships, but also sort of like managing culinary classes, even in the case of DCT, using videos and supporting sort of the videoing of students preparing dishes at home, and then it being graded by the staff within the institution. I mean, quite intensive in terms of resources. And not maybe suitable for every single institution, but it really gave you some ideas of what may be possible. So have a look at that in terms of dealing with sort of practical classes. I know also that our partners, Russell Partnership and STR, our partners, are working hard on supporting sort of alternatives to practical classes. So they're ramping up their sort of online resources to support this, the simulations from Russell Partnership, and also STR are doing a lot of work on sort of replacing internships with research, but supported by STR data. So again, if you're looking for alternatives to practical sort of classes, then by all means approach our partners and see if they can help you with that, because the support is there. We've got an interesting question coming from Kenneth Miller at Stendon, one of my former colleagues at Stendon there. It's just, to what extent is there evidence of the impact of adapted approaches to delivery on student recruitment, retention, dropout, satisfaction, study or performance? So Paul actually mentioned that the higher education across Australia is expecting a big hit. Are either of you aware of how it's impacting on students in terms of performance or satisfaction? Are you tracking this, Aaron?
Yeah, of course. But by the way, the situation in the Netherlands is different, luckily, than what Paul is saying. I think what you see in general in higher education in the Netherlands is that the influx of new students is similar, or a lot of programs slightly higher than normal. So people just don't stop studying, they go study. And of course, while a lot of our students come from the Netherlands or the neighboring countries, that is still possible. So that's a different situation. Also in terms of government money, that's even going slightly up. So we don't have that financial challenge that Paul is describing. And of course, that's luxurious situation, especially if you compare with what's happening in the industry we're actually educating for, because there it's totally different, of course.
Yeah.
Student recruitment is going pretty well, and part of the students who are not able to start last August, especially from outside the EU, are probably able to start in our February intake. So we just moved the non-EU to February, and part of the February influx we invited to start half a year earlier. So we could play a little bit with the numbers and the backgrounds of the student. But what we do see, especially if you look at the course evaluation of Block D, and Block D last year was fully online because we were not open yet. Some courses performed even better than normal, and some substantially lower than normal in terms of student satisfaction. I think it doesn't depend so much on what you're teaching, but much more about the competencies and ability of the lecturers within the course to deal with this new situation. And that comes back to the remark I made earlier, that the ones that keep our support staff most busy are actually the ones who are already pretty skilled. And that you also see that in relation to how those courses are scoring. So the ones that ask most for the support are also the courses that score better in terms of student satisfaction. So we really have to press and reach out to the courses that score lower. The dropout rate, I think what you see right now is similar, although in the Netherlands we have a rule, also Hinke knows that, and probably also Kenneth, that after 1 year you get an advice, which means that you can stay within school or that you're sent away. So you have to get a minimum of credit points to be allowed to stay in the program or to be sent away. And within the Netherlands, most universities chose to postpone that binding study advice to 2 years after the start of the studies instead of 1 year after the start of the studies. So you could say that a group of students that normally would already have left the school are still in, because they have a lower amount of credit points, maybe partly based on poor performance, but also because of Corona. So I think we can't exactly foresee, but what you do see is, I think that in general, quite a few students of year one really suffered from Corona and the online teaching. And that's also why we pressed so hard on making it possible for year one students to come back to campus. Because studying is more than just follow a course and doing an exam. It's also being part of that whole social construct that higher education is, where campuses, we think, are convinced, really play an important role.
Thanks, Aaron. Are you aware of any sort of institutions that are facing issues in terms of satisfaction or recruitment or dropout, Paul, in Australia?
Yeah, so we're waiting with bated breath at the moment because our second delivery period is in the process of wrapping up, and we will get the student feedback from that, which will enable us to have the feedback from what we call our second session, which is being delivered entirely online. And our first session from the start of this year that started off face-to-face, and we literally moved online as we moved from week 2 to week 3. And that was an heroic effort by our teaching staff to get themselves up and online. Student feedback from our first session was significantly higher than previous sessions. My sense is that the students appreciated the enormous effort of the staff and sort of elevated the results. It will be interesting to see what happens in the second session when it's been online from go to woe, and that sort of huge transition isn't in place. But I'm hoping the students still recognise the very significant efforts of the staff. I actually sense, if I may, that it's the teaching staff that say, I'm still not on top of this, please bear with me, you know, we're in this together, we're going to keep chipping away, I will do my best to help you. They're getting much better feedback than those that go, oh, this online stuff is rubbish and I hate it and blah, blah, blah. And the students sort of pick up that vibe and that comes through. So I get that. If I may more directly respond to Kenneth's comments, education is fundamentally counter-cyclical. So whenever the economy tanks, education goes up and vice versa. That's just the way of the world, and it's been like that since year dot. The issue about retention, though, is going to be the really, really interesting one, because as I said earlier, we are just a point in a system. And if anybody halfway through their program says something like, why should I bother finishing because there won't be a job for me? The answer is, because there ain't one there for you now. So continue with your studies, get the best results you can get so that you're in the best competitive position in what will be a really, really tough market into the future. The best examples we've got are out of the United States from their Great Recession. So the student cohorts from the years of sort of 2009, 10 and 11. And those that dropped out are in fact worse off today than what they were when they dropped out. They have not been able to break into the job market. Those that persisted with their studies have been able to secure employment, but have really struggled to get ahead of the situation. But those who continue to study and entered the workforce as the economy was picking up, albeit with a master's degree rather than an undergraduate degree, those ones are absolutely powering along. And again, the Australian vernacular, in Australia we have surf racing, you know, out in the waves, and it's possible in surf racing to be the furthest from the shore, but if you catch the wave, you can ride the wave in and beat all those people that are in front of you, because you can't catch a wave once it's broken and it's rolling. So the best advice I give to students is continue to study, get the best results you can, and then as the economy starts to pick up, then you get back into the workforce.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to taste
and the harsh economics. You know, everybody talks about disruptive technologies and all, you know, all those sort of funky new words. Joseph Schumpeter came up with those terms back in the 1920s. He called it disruptive innovation and destructive capitalism. This idea that capitalism is based upon this idea of new products come in and destroy the old ones and make them redundant and attract people to that. And you know, Schumpeter saw these things over 100 years ago, best part of 100 years ago. And you know, he identified this phenomena that it is about riding these technological waves. If you're there to ride the new technology, you'll do infinitely better than if you're shackled to the old technology, and if you're really shackled to it, you will go down with it. So I continue to say to students, to anybody that will listen, sorry everybody there, but you know, hold your tinder, continue to improve your skill set and your body of knowledge, improve your qualifications, make yourself the most employable person you can be when the job market starts to open up. Don't try and swim against the tide with a limited range of skills. You'll be really struggling.
I'm going to take this opportunity to do a couple of plugs and I hopefully give a couple of avenues for advice because in terms of feedback, in terms of the student satisfaction, members will be aware that through the ISG, we partner with iGraduate and they undertake our student satisfaction survey each year. Those results from the institutes that participated are coming in, so that the survey is completed and we're beginning to get the data back from iGraduate in terms of student satisfaction, which will give us a really interesting snapshot about the student satisfaction through this period. So that's one thing. The second thing is that iGraduate also did a survey on how institutions responded to the crisis, and alongside the virtual IPOE this year, we're going to ask iGraduate to do a webinar to not only explain these results, to detail the results of how our institutions dealt with the COVID crisis, but also in general student satisfaction through this crisis as well. So they'll be doing a webinar alongside the IPOE this year for the first time, a 1-hour webinar. And registrations for the VIP are open as of tomorrow. Yeah, everybody will get an email. We'll circulate an email around to people, and registrations will be open and registrations will be free. So this year, attending the VIPOE is free. So, and not only for people that are attending today, for representatives, any representatives from members. So again, the the crisis and the technology gives us the opportunity for many, many more people to join us this year in the VIPOE. So watch out for that email, and please encourage your colleagues to participate in that. And just going back to what Paul said about jobs and how the state of the industry, what we have done for the VIPOE is on the first day, unusually we've taken it out of academia and we've transferred the focus entirely on industry. And we've got 3 great speakers from industry who will be, and I've not seen this anywhere else, so this will be interesting to me, but hopefully to everybody else, will give the industry view on how the future looks. So are they considering sort of continuing to work with institutions to offer things like internships, placements, even guest lectures? What do they view the future is in terms of their associations with academic institutions? But also, how do they see recruitment in the future? Will they continue to do graduate recruitment? Will they continue to do management development programs? Or basically, are they losing staff? So no, that all that sort of stuff stops. So we've got 3 speakers on the first day of the VIP giving the industry view. So again, look out for that, and please join us at that, and encourage your colleagues to join us, because I think that's going to be a cracking session for us all. Just got a comment from Hinka. Also just saying that she recognises, thank you Paul and Aaron, recognise a lot of what you shared with us. We're struggling at the same time, but we also see some wonderful things happening that won't disappear after COVID. And I think, again, that's a theme that we've identified today, that an awful lot of work has been done to not only for staff, which was the focus of the webinar today, but of course for students, even for parents and supporting parents and the wider community. And that work won't end at the end of COVID. A lot of that work is great work that's delivering good results and creating opportunities, and that will continue into the future. So yeah, thanks for the comment, Inka. I don't see any other questions. So Aaron, do you have any closing comments, or are you okay that we leave it at that?
Craig, did you see my message that I sent to you?
No, I've not. What is that under chat? Or let me see.
Yes, it is.
Joe, would you like me to very quickly small change? Yeah. Yes, please. Sorry, Jane. I didn't see that. I've got that. Yes, please do. Okay. Go ahead.
So I do not want to rub salt into the wound, especially for Paul, who has been on lockdown for so long, and everyone else around the world. But in Queensland, we're extremely fortunate where our restrictions have been lifted. And we're currently on school holidays, the September mid-semester holidays. So I've taken my kids an hour south of where we live, down to a little coastal place called the Gold Coast, and I'm currently staying in a beautiful
hotel without internet, I think.
And that's what happens when you
You faded out there, Jane. Just did you say beautiful?
Sorry, you lost me there for a minute. Where did it drop out?
Beautiful. You said you're in a beautiful bunk
resort, and then and then I apologised because I know that's not fair. But we have seized this opportunity to travel, and I thought I'd just share the changes that have happened on the ground level in these resorts and these 5-star hotels that you see immediately. So in order to be able to open up business in Queensland, there has to have a COVID safe plan in place. So down, there's a pool area, there used to be menus about, there was a bar that was open, all of that's gone. Now they have more wait staff on the ground, which is brilliant. So what we do is we pick up the phone, there's a menu on the wall, we pick up the phone and place an order, and it gets sterilised after each phone call, and then all these wait staff bring it up to you, and then they clean everything. So I'm actually seeing more wait staff on the ground than previously, so that's a positive thing. And in Australia especially, a lot of the hotels were trying to minimise room service. So room service now has had a new resurgence, because everything, all of the mini bars being taken out, all of the compodiums have been taken out of the room. Anything that has a touch point in the rooms is taken out, and you order everything, whether it's something simple from minibar to your normal room service, can be delivered to your room, as well as all of the restaurants around. You can order from them, and they also get delivered to your room. So there's changes in place that are facilitating it the stays essentially without having 50 people or a restaurant maxed out, which is brilliant. They've also at check-in got stickers to make sure that everyone's spaced out, and there's sanitation, there's sanitized stations at every single door, every single elevator. You go onto an elevator and it has stickers to say where you should stand, making sure people are social distancing. And when you actually check in, there's printouts. So what was printed out in the room and in the compodiums, you're actually given them at check-in. So everyone's given one that they then throw out, which isn't environmentally friendly. And I'm sure there's an app that you could download, but that's their way of having to avoid sterilising all the compodiums that used to, you know what I mean, that used to be in rooms. There also used to be a water station down there, down in the pool area. That's now gone, so you just have to order all of that up at room service as well. So they're changing the way they're doing things, and as I said, room service is getting a resurgence, which is great, and there's actually more staff on the ground than there was beforehand, and we're getting better service because of it as well, which is brilliant.
Oh, thanks for that, Jane. Nice insight from the coalface, not so to speak.
It means that business will resume. We just have to slowly wait for it, and there's just changes on the ground and how they facilitate that to make sure that we are COVID safe.
Okay, thanks, Jane. Okay, well, there's no more questions that I can see, or no more comments. I'd just like to thank Aaron and Paul for their really insightful and valuable presentations today. I'd like to thank all the participants for joining us. And as I say, just watch out for the email regarding the VIPA that will come out over the weekend. And also over next week, we're going to make two big announcements from the ICE. We promised all members to put a focus on increasing value from the membership. And next week, I'm going to make two big announcements about partnerships that we've managed to forge, which will return significant value to our members. These are real sort of kind of groundbreaking moves for the ICE. So look out for those coming through next week as well. But until then, I wish everybody a fine end to this working week, a very pleasant weekend, and success, and stay safe in the future. Thank you very much, Anne.